For the last few days, really the last week since the Academy Award nominations have been announced, media has really tackled and given light to a movement afoot now. Probably most synonymous, it's gone under many names, but most synonymous with the hashtag Oscars so white, and really lack of diversity within the Academy Awards. And as somebody who really for the last few months here, the majority of videos on my channel have been about trying to predict these Academy Awards, predicting the precursors to these Academy Awards, guessing who will get in, and so on and so forth. I think I take real issue with people who point fingers at the Academy, its voting body, and its management, with them being the reason why people like Idris Elba, people like Will Smith, and so on and so forth, films like Straight Outta Compton, Concussion, and Creed, and Beasts of No Nation, all left out of major categories in the Academy Awards. Okay, so we have 4 points to make here today that I'm going to make in this video. The first point is to contradict that there were no films of color this year that they nominated, and that didn't receive enough attention throughout the season here of precursors and finally Academy Award nominations. I say false. Okay, when we look at it here, in contention for these big awards like Best Picture, the acting races, and so on, there were only 4 films that we could really predict to potentially get in. Beasts of No Nation, Concussion, Creed, and Straight Outta Compton. That's 4 films. We'll get back to that in a minute. In a few minutes, I should say. We'll get back to that point later. But first of all 4 of these films were represented at least once throughout the precursor season. Starting with Beasts of No Nation, it was a Screen Actors Guild nomination for Best Cast. The equivalent over there to Best Picture was also nominated for Idris Elba in Best Supporting Actor. He was also nominated at the at the Golden Globes and at the British Academy for his performance in the film. Concussion was nominated at the Golden Globes for Best Actor in a Drama. That was Will Smith. Creed has been nominated at Critics' Choice and won the Golden Globe, and is now an Academy Award nominee for Best Supporting Actor for Sylvester Stallone. And Straight Outta Compton is an Academy nominee for Best Original Screenplay. It is also a Screen Actors Guild nominee for Outstanding Cast, and a Producers Guild Award nominee for Best Film of the Year. These 4 films were not shut out this year, no matter what people say, no matter how many people say Oscars so white. True, no people of color were nominated at the end of the day. Even the screenwriters on Straight Outta Compton were Caucasian. These films were seen. The screeners were sent out, and the Academy, maybe not all of them, but certainly enough of them watched the films to nominate 2 of these films, Creed and Straight Outta Compton, for either the acting race for Creed or the screenplay race in the case of Straight Outta Compton. And again, count Beasts of No Nation, Concussion, Creed, and Straight Outta Compton, 4 films that were in major contention for Academy Awards. People bring up films like Tangerine, and that was a very, very tiny film. Didn't have a huge campaign behind it, so I won't count that one. But that one did have, though, the critical reception of a film that sometimes gets up to the level of Academy Award contention. Second point is people boycotting, in this case, the Academy this year as far as the awards night, are really not doing any good. First, we're going to mention people like Jada Pinkett and Will Smith, and Spike Lee, even though he has not specifically said the word boycott. He has expressed frustration with the Academy. Jada Pinkett and Will Smith have both said they're not going to be attending. probably not watching either. And then Mark Ruffalo has said he has considered not participating this year, and I'm sure this list will grow as the days pass, unless people really come to their senses here, because boycotting the Academy Awards doesn't do anybody any good in what the real issue is here. We'll get to the real. We'll land at the real issue here in a few minutes. But the real issue here is not specifically the Academy Awards. The issue here with these people is this is one night out of the year that you're not supporting Hollywood, that you're not supporting the industry. Everybody's going to forget about it the next day. And a year from now, when the next Academy Award nominations come out, whatever happens, these people's names, Spike Lee, Jada Pinkett, and Will Smith, their names are most likely, unless we have another year where we have no diversity at nominations, these names will not be brought up again. This will just go down as one night in history that nobody remembers. I mean, another example of this, just a speculative example. Let's say you're a vegetarian and you don't like that McDonald's serves chicken nuggets. Well, let's say one night out of the year, so yeah, you don't like that. So one day you decide to go up to McDonald's, pick it, and stuff, and say that you shouldn't be serving chicken. You shouldn't be killing animals for food. Well, first of all, unless you're somebody of merit, or I should say merit, somebody who is going to catch headlines, nobody's going to remember it the next day. Even the people who see it are more, unless they're family members or somebody who they know, most likely that's not going to do them any good as far as starting a cause or something. This is one night out of the year, and in a month's time, let alone like a few days' time, nobody is going to remember this. Okay, that's point number 2. Point number 3. We've been hearing very recently, as in today, that Cheryl Boone Isaacs, who's the president of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, who was, she said the morning of the nominations, very disappointed in the Academy for not diversifying in their nominees, has said that they're considering changing Academy rules and regulations to open up the Best Picture category even further than anywhere from 5 to 10 films, which is what the regulations are now, with the preferential ballot. Well, we could spend about 10 to 15 minutes explaining that, but instead I would recommend you go check out somebody else with that. In fact, you might want to check out 2 or 3, because not everybody gets it 100% right, and it is, I'm not sure that I even understand it all the way. But anyways, basically, the idea here is to change it again so that we can get more diversity in our nominees. Well, we tried that a few years ago. You can go back in history many years over. Pretty much starting from the early 40s on, I can't remember the specific year, they went from 10 nominees a year, which was the standard for the first maybe 6 or 7 years or so of the history of the Academy nominations. They went from 10 films nominated for Best Picture to 5, and it stayed there for the next almost 70 years. And it wasn't until 2009, following the year of 2008, which was the year The Dark Knight did not get in as a Best Picture nominee, and there was kind of an outcry from people that it's time to change things and allow more diverse films. In this case, not diverse as far as race, but in diversity as far as popularity in films to allow them to be nominated. And since then, we have only seen a select number of films which were released in the summer season, which was the same season that The Dark Knight was released, that were not specifically released in a pattern or in a way that would accommodate them to be in a good position to be nominated for Best Picture. In other words, they weren't released in September, October, November, or December to capitalize on their potential to be an Oscar nominee, the same way, say, that Interstellar was in 2014. or potentially you could say Star Wars was in this last year. And we've only seen examples like Inception or this year Mad Max Fury Road, and that's about all I can remember off the top of my head as far as films that have actually been Best Picture nominees that were released outside of what we regularly call the awards season, which is September to December in there, where they release all of these films, a majority of these films, I should say. So that was in 2009, and that didn't work. Instead, we're seeing, yeah, we'll get those 5 films, which are the popular films with the Academy, the ones that get 6, 7, 8 nominations or more. This year we have The Revenant with 12 nominations. We'll see those still get in, and those are, we'll see 3, maybe 4 of those. And the rest of the slots, whether it's 8 like this year and last year, 9 like all the years previous, or 10 like those 2 years, 2009 and 2010, that we get more of the films which have been the way the Academy's been going, which are the smaller, independent, more merited films. The way, the films that will win all those critics awards. The way this year, like you could look at a Brooklyn or Room, these smaller independent movies that normally wouldn't have made that list if the film nominations were 5. If we only had 5 Best Pictures, something like Room, Brooklyn probably wouldn't have made it. They wouldn't have been Best Picture nominees. But now that we have the 5 to 10 rule with the preferential ballot, we can have up to 10. And something like Room and Brooklyn are accommodated into that because of that. However, films like Star Wars, which was a big box office hit, and a few others this year were not. Interstellar, a couple of years ago, made a lot of money and was released in that same time with a lot of the other awards-heavy films, wasn't a nominee. A question of whether or not they're worthy, yes, comes up. But the whole reason that we're seeing that shift from 5 to 10 to up to 10 nominees now is because people were angry that popular films weren't being nominated. And another thing, too, this helped out was with ratings. But nowadays, even still, there's going to be people who switch on the TV the night of the Academy Awards, and they're going to look at the list of nominees when they finally get to Best Picture and say, I don't know any of those films. Or they'll name off the 5 actors or the 5 actresses in the acting categories, and they will say, I don't know who that is. I don't know who that is. I haven't seen that film, but I know who that is. That's, and sometimes, again, too, based on the merit of the performance or of the film, maybe there's a reason that they're there, maybe there's a reason that they're not there. But this, but this example, though, of changing the Academy rules and regulations to try to fix things has shown that it has not worked the way they wanted it to. True, we're getting films like Mad Max Fury Road and Inception as Best Picture nominees, but that's only every once in a great while. We're still seeing a lot of nominees that were not huge box office hits. And that was more or less the sole reason that they switched to the 5 to 10 rule. All right, now the final point, and probably my most significant point here, into why this whole movement of Oscars so white is wrong and wrong-headed. Hashtag Oscars so white is very popular after the nominations last Thursday. Hashtag Oscars so white is a lie, and it's not true. Hashtag Hollywood so white is more like it. You see, the Academy is part of the industry, the Hollywood film industry. Almost all of its 6,000 plus members in the voting, who vote, I should say, for the awards, for nominations, and eventual winners, live in the Valley, in Hollywood. They live out there, on the coast. I do not live there. So I don't know personally what the environment is like, but for those 6,000 people, they have been in this industry, most of them, for a long time. And statistically, we have seen numbers come out like 94% of the Academy being Caucasian. Something like 75%, approximately, more or less, are males. And something like 65 is the median age, not just a given age for one voter, but the median age, as in there's people below and people above that number in age who are voting for this. That's the median age is 65 for voters. That means these are people who have lived through and have been alive for the civil rights movement and the days of Martin Luther King and the days of the Selma marches, the Montgomery bus, stuff in Montgomery, the boycotting down there, I should say, is what I'm trying to say. And they lived through the assassinations of John F. Kennedy, of Martin Luther King, of and so on and so forth. And some of these people who are voters, not all of them, I mean, maybe not any of them actually, but the thing is, the Hollywood heads, the people who head the studios, are the ones that you really, really need to blame here for why Oscars are so white this year. Let me go back to that first point I made. Films of color this year: Beasts of No Nation, Concussion, Creed, Straight Outta Compton. That's 4 films. Twice as many films with Caucasian leads and with majority of Caucasian casts were nominated for Best Picture. That's twice as many. Plus, you add into that all the other films who were not Best Picture nominees, but who received nominations with majority white or with all white casts, and who had Caucasian lead characters. Films like The Danish Girl, The Hateful Eight, with the exception of Samuel L. Jackson. Films like Star Wars, with the exception of John Boyega. Films like these that received multiple nominations, even Steve Jobs, did not have a non-Caucasian lead. Now, in the case of these films, again, like I said, not all of them were Best Picture nominees. But they clearly outnumber the number of films that have non-Caucasian lead characters. So in that case, we need to see, if we want to see true diversity working in the Academy, we need to see more than 4 films each year that feature non-Caucasian, whether they're African American, Latino, Native American, Asian American, Indian American, whatever minority or non-Caucasian race you are, we need to see more films like that made. And changing Academy rules and regulations doesn't do a damn thing. It's changing the industry and getting the industry heads to wake up and smell the coffee. That Hollywood is no longer a white industry. It's a diverse industry. Oscars So White can change with a diverse industry, not a white industry, which is what we have right now. We have films this year like The Martian, which is a fictional film based on a book that did not involve any real-life people who were featured in the film. Films like Steve Jobs, however, films like The Revenant, films like The Danish Girl, however, did feature real-life characters. And Spotlight is another example too, and there's many this year. They all featured real-life characters who were Caucasians in the lead roles. Therefore, you're going to have to give us a good reason why you're changing things if you do cast a non-Caucasian lead actor into one of those roles, playing Hugh Glass from The Revenant, or playing Steve Jobs, or playing all the journalists in Spotlight, or playing the first transgender in The Danish Girl. However, something like The Martian or Room, which was another film based on a book that was not based on real events or real people specifically, they didn't necessarily have to be Caucasian lead characters. We could have easily seen room played with African American actors, or Asian American actors, or Native American actors, and so on and so forth with non-Caucasian. The same with The Martian. Sure, now in some of these cases, the casting directors and the director of the film can step in and say, okay, we want to look at who auditioned for the role. And if they pick who they think is best and it happens to be a Caucasian person, then okay, go with it. However, it's in cases though, for example, like The Martian, there is an argument out there that maybe instead of a Matt Damon in the role, how about you cast somebody like a Will Smith or somebody else who was in the film, very talented person of color, and that is Chiwetel Ejiofor. Maybe you could have cast them in the role, and you'll get answers like, well, they're not as well known across the globe. And the main reason that we are in this business, they'll say, is money. And if your movie is going to make more money with this person instead of this person, they're going to go with this person, whoever this is. And it happens to be Matt Damon. And then again, of course, Matt Damon, nothing against the guy. But perhaps he was just cast because he gave the best audition, he was right for the role, and maybe he was. Maybe if Chiwetel Ejiofor or Will Smith or somebody else had been cast in the role who was not Matt Damon, had played the role of Mark Watney in the film, maybe the film would have suffered. But you can't deny that casting a Will Smith or a Chiwetel Ejiofor in that role would not have changed the film at all. You cannot deny that. The character would have stayed the same in name, and the plot would have stayed the exact same. The supporting cast would have stayed the exact same. The script, you didn't need many changes. The direction, you can speak the same way to anybody, whether they're African American, Caucasian, or not, or other. However you want to say that. There's, sure, Matt Damon, maybe he was right for the role. Maybe he wasn't. Maybe somebody else could have stepped in and played it. But either way, it is the people in Hollywood who are not giving everybody a chance, who are not diversifying in the casting room and letting non-Caucasian people even audition. These are the people who need to really wake up and smell the coffee and need to diversify in Hollywood. And it's also the studio heads who need to lay down a little bit of their money and take it out of the other movies that are costing hundreds of millions of dollars and put together $25 million total, and that includes your marketing costs, to put together a film with a non-Caucasian cast if you want to. And that will diversify Hollywood a little bit, and that will help also if your film is good enough in your eyes and in the eyes of the studio and everyone around you that you can start campaigning for it for Oscar and for attention at Academy Awards and at other awards ceremonies. So you need to diversify in Hollywood. Here's my conclusion. Give everybody a chance in Hollywood and expand films with non-Caucasians in the lead roles, and even expand films with non-Caucasians. We can really see a change in diversity here at the Academy Awards with nominees and with potential nominees by just doing one thing. You turn that 4 films with credible, big support from studios, Beasts of No Nation, Concussion, Creed, and Straight Outta Compton this year, turn those 4 films into 10 films, into 12 films, or more. Then you'll stand a much better chance. Those films will have a much better chance of being thrown into the mix of films that are going to get Academy attention. And finally, we might see attention from the Academy of nominations for more diverse roles. And this does not just apply to African Americans and black-skinned actors. This applies to Asian Americans, to Native American actors, to Indian actors, to all the diversities out there in different races who are underrepresented in Hollywood. You don't have the Academy and their voters to blame for this, for not being recognized. You have the Hollywood system and the studio heads to blame for this, for not allowing you the opportunity in some cases. Now, again, sometimes these are money calls, and in those cases, there's not much you can do about that. You're just going to have your selfish studio heads who want a bigger paycheck at the end of the day. And I can't change that. You can't change that. It's up to them to just move on or to come to their senses. But just the bottom line here, give everybody a chance in Hollywood, all diversities, all races, all classes. Give them an opportunity, even if it's something big like The Martian, even if it's something like Room, where you have a fictional character or fictional characters. And if somebody comes in who is a very talented individual, and just because they're not Caucasian, that does not mean automatically we can just say, nope, 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 pass, go on to somebody else. Please, give non-Caucasians and give people of different races and different the same comes, I think, with sexual orientations as well, and with and especially when it comes to the moolah in wages, definitely give females a chance too, because that is something else too. There is no reason to demean half of the human race and give them, lower wages just because they have a different anatomy than you. That's a different topic for another day, but I just want to throw that in there quickly. So, again, expanding your film count of films with non-Caucasians in the lead roles and giving them the budget to be in advertisements. Well, first of all, that will get you more money at the box office, and if you show your film as a box office success, then you get a couple of people in the industry, including Academy voters, that they will finally they'll pick up their heads, they'll listen, and they'll say, okay, what film was that? So that's why this year I think films like Creed and Straight Outta Compton, which were very big box office hits in Hollywood with earnings of over $100 million domestically, were close this year. Straight Outta Compton, especially with that PGA nomination, had to have been close. And I think Idris Elba, we can classify that as the Netflix factor. For those of you who don't know, Beasts of No Nation was very, very exclusively and for a short time played in Hollywood and New York for a few venues in theater, and otherwise it was streamed on Netflix. And apparently, these 65-year-old median age voters just couldn't get their Netflix to work, and they didn't want to watch the film or couldn't watch the film. And with Concussion, we can look at that best actor race and say, okay, well, Bryan Cranston was excellent. We can look at and say Michael Fassbender was excellent. Leonardo DiCaprio was excellent. Eddie Redmayne, I haven't seen the film, but all I've heard is good press on him. And the fifth nominee was Matt Damon, and he was great in the film too. I mean, it's a tough field here too. And Concussion, true, it did get noticed. And Will Smith is a very, very talented, very successful, likable, charismatic guy. But it's just sometimes we see this happen with actors where they just can't make it in, and it's a close battle sometimes. And just for me personally, having seen Concussion, I would not put him above, say, a Michael Fassbender or a Leonardo DiCaprio or a this year with a Bryan Cranston. I might put him maybe above Matt Damon, not because of a race issue, no, just on a pure performance, level there. And again, that's nothing against Matt Damon. That's nothing against the film, The Martian. But it's just sometimes the competition is that stiff. Anyway, so once again, my bottom line here, a word on diversity in Hollywood and Oscars so white is Oscars aren't so white. Hollywood's so white. So next time you want to truly make an impact too on the Academy Awards and just on recognizing diversities as a whole in Hollywood, you don't point to 6,000 people in an industry, and most of them now are nearing or at retirement age. No. You point to the people who are still working, who head the studios. Those are the people who evidently are not giving chances to these different races and different classes. Again, I don't work in Hollywood. I am not the head of a studio. I do not work in or around Hollywood. Let me make that clear. But if we want real change in diversity, we need it to start at the top. And that is not the Academy Awards, because at the end of the day, the Academy Awards do not rule Hollywood. The studio heads do. So give those studio heads a talking to.